And your
at the
dad loved
same
Elvis. Your dad had a guitar.
And my dad
you
was
know,
an
yeah.
Elvis when he was really young and first learning guitar. He was, like everybody, an Elvis impersonator.
Yeah.
So for right? I know. Just imagine
Yeah.
this Inuk boy out on the tundra as an Elvis impersonator.
How are you?
I'm good, Tom. How are you?
I'm well. I'm not doing too bad. Congratulations on the. So, like I was saying to you, I just adored I really loved the book. Like, in addition to being such a personal story of everything you've kind of gone through in your life that I didn't know about as a fan and as someone who knows your music. Also about the music industry at the time, about how different things were back then, about a changing country, about the formation of Nunavut. Like, so much in there. Congratulations on it. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
I thought we could start by listening to some music.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, can you tell me what we're listening to?
Oh, that's my mom and dad. And CBC Northern Services used to produce annual recordings, LPs, of Northern artists across, it was the Northwest Territories, so right across. And one year they invited and selected my mom and dad to do a gospel album. So that's a gospel album. I have a copy of the LP, yeah. And mom and dad's voices. Oh, my goodness.
Nice to hear.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that.
What were their names?
David and Dorothy Aglukark.
And ministers, right? Ministers in the church.
Yeah, for the longest time, I thought both were ordained. But I learned recently that just my dad was ordained and my mother is just this incredibly well-educated in faith and her ministry, just incredibly well-versed and read, and she writes incredible things of her beliefs. I just assumed she was also ordained because she does preach, she does sermons, but she's not ordained. But yeah, they both they were very heavy in their belief and faith.
The why of their faith and the intensity of their faith is something that comes up again and again throughout the book. Talk to me a little bit about how when you were a kid, like how did music and faith sort of intersect in the house?
I felt very strongly that the beginning of the story in Kihiani needed to be that time of my childhood, which was birth until I was about 6 or 7 years old. And most of that time was spent in Rankin Inlet. We moved around a lot in the Kivarluk region, so Rankin, Akviat, a bit of time in Well Cove, and a brief visit in Baker Lake, but primarily Rankin and Akviat. So those early years were in Rankin Inlet, and this is the early 70s to the mid 70s. And my parents had gotten into their choice of faith, which was the Pentecostal church initially, and then it was the Glad Tidings, or maybe it was just the Glad Tidings.
Mm-hmm.
But as a child, it was just the best time of my life, of that part of my life, because in the homes where they would host services, because they didn't have a church yet, a physical building yet.
Yeah, your uncle had a church, right, or something like that.
So my uncle Aliak, my dad's uncle, my great uncle, he was an Anglican minister.
Yeah, that's
so
right,
they had that.
Yeah, but yours were in the home.
Ours there was no Glad Tidings facility church building yet. So in the beginning, we had these gatherings in our home, in our house. And I have this very vivid memory of a house full, the guitars are out, and they're singing, and the foods. It was just a great time, And that was those early childhood memories of my parents. And when I started kind of mapping out the story, and even before that, if I had to come up with a word to describe my parents and that time, even up to now, that stayed with me, it's that they just believed so deeply. They were compelled by something to do what they did in the early years of that settlement life. And to this day, right to the end, they still are. My father passed 4 years ago. My mother is still with us, and she still reads the Bible every day. I'm sure she can quote the Bible verse to verse, Genesis through Revelations, but she will sit there and she will still study it. That kind of commitment and faith and compelled by something to do something.
There's something I want to stick on you said there is that they believed so deeply in something at the beginning of the settlement life, which is worth sticking on because your life that you grew up with as a child unbelievably could not have been more different, not just from the way your parents grew up, but from the way Inuit had been raised for tens of thousands of years in and around the North, right? So when you say the beginning, like they had to hold on to something in the beginning days of their settlement life, it was the beginning of the days of just a whole new way of living.
Yeah. And so this is one of those discoveries that I fell on over the course of this career. Had it not been for this, I would not have known to look, ask the questions, and to look at that part of our life through the lens of the artist, through the lens of a writer. And that piece is this realization that this generation of Inuit, were the first, in the Kivalliq region, I can't speak for all of Inuit Nunangat, to live in all of our lives in settlement. And then the other incredible realization being, so that means that my parents' generation, their birth and formative years was traditional. In their lifetime, they went from the traditional way of living
on the land,
into coercions, into settlements. So that recently, their life had changed as much as it had. So when I think back on, that early childhood time and why it was so important to share the absolute joy I remember in my childhood in Inuit Nunangat, small communities, Rankin and Akviat, it's how we were protected up to a point from what they had just been through. But also, that first generation of leaders were the first graduates from residential school. And that's who formed settlements. And it was just this,
It's a circle. It's a foundation. It's a foundational thing, you realized.
Yeah. It started to make sense. I talk about the undertone of the settlement life in the early years. Because there was always this energy, and because of the nature of our home, I thought it was good, and it was good, but there's always this kind of restlessness, too, that was lurking in the settlement, always. And when that piece fell into place, our leaders, a majority of our leaders who would have been forced into residential school, graduated from residential school, and if you sit with that for a moment and you realize, okay, that restlessness, that part of that undertone of the settlement life started to make sense.
It's that small realization about the structure of where you came from, even though you were sheltered from it and you lived a pretty what seemed like a very idyllic life.
Yeah.
It casts everything in a new light.
In a new light.
And I think that comes up over and over again in the book, like the impact of decisions made in the sort of colonial project, like decisions that were made of the changing of or the stripping away of a traditional way of life from Inuit. And how that didn't stop with your parents' generation, how that continues on. I mean, let's just skip ahead to when you go to high school, right? So, like, you're in Arviat and you're in Rankin, and you have to go to high school. So there's no high school, so you're forced to go to, I think it's Iqaluit.
Yeah.
And then you didn't love that.
Yeah.
Weren't crazy about Iqaluit.
No.
And then you go to Yellowknife.
Yeah.
And there you write some poetry. Can we play the piece of music?
Trying to find a way, dreaming dreams
Susan, that's Searching from 1992.
So young.
What do you hear? Can I say this? You do sound kind of young, dude. To be
Oh
honest.
my
Yeah.
God. Like, what, 22, 23 years old.
You were writing poetry about what?
So I was writing about living between two worlds because I dropped out of grade 10 because we had to go to Iqaluit. I was still Frobisher Bay at the time. I was 15 when I went to high school that first year. So home for the holidays and didn't go back, dropped out of grade 10. A year and a half later, I end up in Yellowknife, and I had started writing, diary writing, journal writing. And I now recognize there were the daily journaling pieces, but there's also these little bits that was poetry. I didn't know the word poetry when I was doing this, but there's these little bits of writing I was doing. So in Yellowknife, it was a good experience. I was there with my sister, many from the Kihiani region. We knew each other, cousins, friends. We were not isolated or alone necessarily, away from home, completely foreign, but not necessarily alone. A lot of learning to do. So I found myself often finding quiet places to write. And this is where I wrote, originally written in Inuk, I am searching. For this piece of music, we did the reverse. We need to translate it into English. So the song is a bit of Inuk and in English as well, the translation. But I wrote Kinakpunga, Maligak Samnit are the first two words. I am searching for something or someone to follow, meaning we're still kind of lost here.
Yeah.
Do we belong here? This is kind of foreign territory for us. Mostly First Nations in residence, Akecho Hall, which is not that that's a bad thing, but we really don't quite belong here either. We didn't really belong in Ukivik, in Frobisher Bay either. Kihiani Inuit necessarily didn't belong in the Baffin. So there was always this kind of, I got to graduate because everybody says you need that grade 12 diploma, but I don't feel comfortable here, 100% comfortable here. Where do I belong?
Can you talk a little bit about how that poem ends up becoming like your first hit? I mean, you're a very unlikely candidate to have a hit.
At that time, absolutely. So I moved to Ottawa in 1989.
No goals of being, you weren't playing the bars, you weren't,
No choirs.
No.
No music lessons, no nothing. I'm a preacher's kid, so we had to participate in church, whatever that meant, sing along, play an instrument.
And your dad loved Elvis. Your dad had a guitar.
And my dad was an Elvis when he was really young and
yeah.
first learning guitar. He was, like everybody, an Elvis impersonator.
Yeah.
So for, right?
Yeah,
I know, just imagine
Yeah.
this Inuk boy out on the tundra as an Elvis impersonator. So I moved to Ottawa in 1989 after the court case, and I had no other choice but to leave. And so I get this incredible job opportunity, Indian Affairs, 1-year contract. And very shortly after moving there, having this great conversation with my boss at the time was David Webster. And I talk about, we just viewed this documentary called Between Two Worlds. So the next day we were talking about this. I've got this poem called Kinakpunga, and I showed it to him. And the conversation was about creating a short documentary piece about having to go away to finish grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. This was the conversation. From there, it turns into this other kind of project, takes on this whole other life. In the building in Hull, Quebec, it used to be this full-on legitimate recording studio with everything in it. We were going to shoot video for this documentary. And then, well, we hear you can sing. Well, I'm a preacher's kid, so any preacher's kid can sing. Mm. Well, we want you to finish the translation. We're going to hire a jazz musician, Larry Crosley, to write the music for this project. So he writes this piece of music, the melody for the song. So all of this, to my mind, is just part of the job. Mm-hmm. I'm just still doing my communications coordinator job.
I'm working for Indian Affairs. This is going to be part of the, this is what's going to happen.
Well, and that's what was the idea. Part of my job was around Ottawa area high schools, Inuit history, contemporary Inuit history lesson. This is going to be part of this presentation.
Yeah.
So all of this team ends up putting together this video project / music video. And then I think it would be Dennis who submitted this to Denise Donlin, who was running Much Music at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And Denise puts it on Much Music.
Oh, no way.
And that's how I ended up with a music video on Much Music long before I'd done any live performing anywhere.
This very reluctant, I mean, you just thought you were doing your job. You just thought I
part
was,
of
you know.
my job description.
And next thing you know, you get a call that your music
You
video
have
is
a
on.
music video on Much Music.
And does very well, by the way.
Yeah.
Like becomes a hit song. What I find interesting about that is that's sort of the first time you start to feel like this sort of feeling of less than starts to come in. You're doing press, you're doing interviews, this sort of inferiority.
I'd always felt that way.
Even when...
Even with the job at Indian Affairs. So the less than is this bigger issue. I feel like it's the thing, had we not organized as Indigenous folks, First Nations for First Nations, Inuit leaders for Nunavut, had they not recognized what was happening, which is that the way that our settlements are structured, the way that things are being managed and handled in our communities, we are institutionalizing our systems. We are a systemic organization, larger organization. And part of that, for me, was when I moved to Ottawa, I feel like I was almost completely institutionalized because I remember very clearly Ilra Sungnik, always being a little bit afraid of everything around me.
Yeah, I'll pause there and say that that term you just used, iragasangyok, this is a term meaning afraid or inferior or critical of yourself? Or...
In the context of that part of my journey, because there really isn't a definition in English for iragasangyok. So the best way to describe it is in a state of emotional fear. When I first moved to Ottawa, I have to get to my job in Hull, Quebec, but I'm living on this side of Ottawa, and I have to catch a bus. And so I would walk to the bus stop, just afraid that I'm going to have to make contact with that bus driver. But that bus driver is a white guy, and he may not let me on the bus because I'm not white. That kind of conditioning or institutionalizing. Nobody did anything necessarily for me to get to that state, but I was in that state when I got there.
Yeah.
So fear.
And it only gets more apparent when you are doing things that anyone would find, like having to do interviews about your music, having to promote your music.
Yeah, because in the early part of the career, after Dreams for You, so searching, we do Dreams for You with the same CBC team, and then that same CBC team included Randall Prescott, with whom I started Arctic Rose and recorded and wrote Arctic Rose. All white guys. And I say that with love and respect because they were wonderful, wonderful people. That was not the issue, but to my mind's eye, these are all white people, so there was always a piece of me that was a little bit, always in this state going into these writing sessions and all these stuff. And then even in Indian Affairs, I didn't quite belong. There's the Inuit division of myself. David Webster, who was our manager, was a white guy married to an Inuk woman, and I knew them well, so I never felt uncomfortable with David. And my supervisor at the time was a lovely Inuk woman named Deborah. Other than that, I'd never really known any other Inuit in Indian Affairs. So we're like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to belong here. But we did our jobs. I love my job, actually. I love the work I was learning to do under Deborah's supervision. But the song comes out. You're introduced to this whole other world, the recording studio, musicians and producers, and this incredible place. And who am I here? I'd yet to discover self. And then you're introduced to this whole other world. And now I have to figure this out, but I want to. It feels so good.
Well, you're also getting so much, I mean, there's this line you say, you were the worst person to become a celebrity is one of the things. Because you become very, very well known, especially in Canada, especially among Inuit, but like you become very well known. What do you mean it was the worst thing that could happen to you?
Because honestly, to this day, I don't know how to be a celebrity. And I don't know how else to say that, because I say an accidental artist. It was just a series of incredible opportunities and moments that led up to a record deal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I left home with this plan and this big dream and this goal. It was just go away for a while. Shortly after, you're in a recording studio, you've got Searching, and now you've got the Arctic album. And now there's record labels calling you. It's like, I remember asking my manager and Randall,
That's right.
what's a record deal? What will that mean? Oh, well, it'll mean they'll pay for everything. Oh, good, because we're broke.
Yeah.
But I didn't know very much about that part of the industry. And a lot of that part of the industry also meant me being at the center of it all the time.
And you were a baby. Like you were a little...
22, 23,
Yeah.
24. You know, so young.
And you had already been through so much already. And so Susan mentioned this was after the court case. It was a line Susan mentioned earlier, and I didn't... If you're listening to wondering why I didn't follow up on that, it sort of has to do with something that's also discussed in this song. So can we play that song? Catch everybody up here. So after Searching, you record some music for CBC North. Then you make your first album, Arctic Rose, as you mentioned, in '92. That's a big tune off that record called Still Running. Knowing your story, not just learning more about your story in the book, but also learning about the ways in which you have had to tell the story and the certainly maybe problematic ways the story has been sort of forced on you. I just want to put the boat in the water and let you row it. Tell us a little bit about this track. Tell us a little bit about the themes it's touching on. Tell us a little bit about what inspired it.
So I left home being the Kivalliq region in 1989. I took this job. It was a saving grace for me, because it meant 1 year away from the thing I had, which was a court case. We won the court case. But what I wasn't prepared for, what I don't think any of us was ever prepared for, was that my life would change as much as it did in that community. And I couldn't be there or stay there any longer. Something had to change. So I moved to Ottawa. Shortly after Ottawa, I find myself in this incredible environment, musicians, artists, and what I now understand is expression. And so what that means is, in the studio, I start writing these memories. I start turning the things I had brought with me to Ottawa into these pieces of writing that becomes these songs. And they're very personal songs. I remember Randall, when he asked me, would you explore songwriting with me after Dreams for You and before Arctic Rose? Would you continue to write with me? I said, I will, but I don't know anything but what I brought with me here, and I'll write about that. And that was, I'd already lost cousins to suicide, 2 cousins to suicide, and another friend to suicide. And the court case, and the child sex abuse, the court case against our abuser. Yeah,
I mean, I should maybe stop there. And again, I just want to make this as broad as I can, but you had experienced a pretty... serious sexual assault, sexual abuse as a child. And it's very clear in the book, like it would be to anybody, there's a before and after of you. I mean, you say something like, I was somebody else afterwards.
Yeah. And that's a very clear moment in my life, is that memory. And the best way I can describe it is like hitting a wall. Like a black veil comes down, because you can sort of see through the black veil. You see normal on the other side, but you're never going to go there again. Nothing you do in your life from that point on will ever bring you back to whatever normal could have been. So that was a very clear always has been very moment for me. When I'm never going to go back to that.
Yeah.
And so years later, I'd moved back to Rankin, graduated from high school, and I was presented an opportunity to participate in a court case against him.
Yeah.
I was not part of the leading up to this point. And I said yes. And so we got involved, and we won the court case. And so fast forward now to moving to Ottawa, and then the songwriting, and the very personal things that between the court case and the songwriting in the studio, exploring the song and why still running, but all the other songs. And that's when things started to become very real for me. It's like, oh, these are the things that I had repressed all these years because our environments don't allow us to really work through the trauma at the time. There was no way to explore or work through the trauma at that time.
Is it when you say get it out like that? Was it re-traumatizing or was it healing?
Both.
Yeah.
I think this is the complexity we don't talk enough about in the Indigenous community, or for us with our supports, whatever our supports are. We're going to go through both, re-triggering while healing. And that's what was happening in the writing of Arctic Rose. And nobody knew that was happening in that team of people. Nobody knew, because I didn't know that I could share it to that degree. And they weren't the right people to share it with. It wasn't about that. But what was happening was I was sharing it. I don't want to say opening up old wounds, even though that's what it was, because the wounds had always been there. But it was in the process of writing them was this movement in the body. It's like, oh, I can feel through these things and come out at the other end a little bit better. That's what I want to know. That's what was happening.
So there's a couple of things that come up when you say that. One is I'm remembering your, I don't know if testimony is the right word, but your recommendations during missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And I watched your speech last night, and now this is making more sense to me. You said, there's great opportunities for rehabilitation for those who have perpetrated these horrific events. There's not much for victims. Yeah. We need to help victims as well. I'm understanding that so much better now,
right,
in that because you were a victim and you had no opportunity to get this out.
Yeah.
The other thing that's come sticking up to me is that you were in a room writing these songs about these the suicides that you had experienced with your friends and family, this horrific event that had happened to you, the court case you had gone through, and you said something along the lines of like, I didn't, none of these people could relate to any of that. None of these people in the room could relate to any of that. You write about going on this tour, the Arctic Rose tour, to Inuit communities, and you start to realize, if I'm not wrong, that what had happened, what you may have considered your own personal experience, all of a sudden people were relating to it.
Yeah, and so many.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first time that I was truly afraid of what I had started.
See, I would have thought it would have been like, oh, wow, my story is touching so many people.
No, because at that time, there were still no supports in place.
Yeah.
I feel like what I was doing was opening up wounds, and they're cutting deeper, and nobody's there to help them. And that scared me, because I know what that's like to not have that support. That's why I left. I had an opportunity. Many don't. And this is the challenge, and one of the things that makes healing complex in our environments. The supports are there, but there's still such a big gap in other supports that we need in our communities. 30 years later, there were even less 30 years ago when we started this work. And so in the early years, when this conversation started with Arctic Rose, there was a lot of conflict in my body, in me, about, do I celebrate my first album? Or what? Because look what we've started. And I didn't know. I'm very proud of Arctic Rose. I wouldn't do it any other way. Given a choice now, it had to be done that way. I wouldn't do it any other way. But there was still that that hesitation there.
There was a responsibility that you had assumed, and
Yeah.
I think you write that I couldn't walk away from.
Yeah. And why the book, the title, Kihiani. There are things you had to do. They had to be done.
You're going through all this internal conflict. You're traveling the world, doing a lot of speeches in addition to playing a lot of music. And then from those speeches, we get the origin story of a song that, sort of blew up all around the world. But I also didn't know it was sort of a song you needed as well. And I love hearing the origin of it. Can we just play a little bit of it?
OCM, we are all family. OCM, we're all the same. OCM, the fires of freedom. Dance in the burning flame.
Susan Aglukark and OCM. At one point you say it became the #1 song in the country, so that means it got played on the radio 5 times a day on every station. And I think I remember that. I think I remember hearing it 5 times a day.
Yeah.
By the way, we listened to it last night. It holds up. It's a great song.
Thank you.
So let's put everybody in the context of where this song was written. You're dealing with all this internal conflict about what you've started with Arctic Rose. You have a new record to do. And then you're giving a speech, and you meet some folks. Was it from the Coast Salish community?
Coast Salish Nation, yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm going to back up a bit. A couple of things happening at the same time around that time, which was the Inception Sound Studios, where I went for my first debut album with the label, my producer, Chad Urshik. They did this thing when I first went there to start songwriting with them, which was they intentionally created a space where I could just explore. And so they have a Studio A, Studio B. They still have that to this day. And Studio B is the smaller of the 2 studios. They set me up there and they said, bring your CDs, do what you need to do, go in there, bring your notebooks, do what you want to do. It's your space. And that space allowed me to set aside what had started with Arctic Rose, enough so that I could go into some other space to see what other possibilities are there. I was not convinced yet that I was a singer-songwriter. I had a record deal, but I was like, I don't know if I can do this. And then we start the public speaking also around that time, 93, 94. And one of my first events was at a conference in Banff, Alberta. And we're at the head table, and there were 2 gentlemen from the Coast Salish Nation, and I remember it very clearly. And they did this beautiful thing. They started their presentation, because they were working down in order of the way that we were sitting. And they welcomed an honored guest, Haichka Siamosiea. And I was really touched by this, the gesture and the language. And so at the end of the conference, I went to speak with them. And they were outside the hotel, and they explained to me what OCM, Haichka Siamosiea, meant. And I asked them if I could use the words in a song. Could I? It's not my language. I'm an Inuk. They are First Nations. And they said, yeah. And I remember I wanted their names so that I could acknowledge them. And neither of us had any paper, but they were outside for a quick smoke, and they were smoking Export A, the blue and white cigarette pack.
Yeah, I know.
So they tore off this piece of the Export A pack, and they put their names on this piece, and I put that in my pocket. I had it for years and years, and I went looking for it, and I couldn't find it. But in that conversation, and this is the early time of writing the album, This Child, it was just like this, okay, I don't have to pursue the idea of celebrity in this first world record, signing record deal situation, because that's what everybody seemed to be at the table excited about, first Inuk record deal. I was still just trying to figure out if I'm a singer-songwriter. And so what they did was, it's not about celebrity. You're okay right now just to explore. Haichka Siamosiea, everybody equally. You're whatever you're exploring right now, whatever you're going into, is for everybody, not just you. So don't worry about the pressure that's here. Just focus on what's here. And that's where OCM comes from. Everything about it from the beginning was this, like a relief, a release.
It's an interesting book about what success can do and what it can't do. But there is a change in you that happens in the book. The ilra songyok, like that, well, to use the words that doesn't exist, like the inferiority that I'll try to do a mistranslation, like starts to just starts to change a little bit. That feeling of powerlessness, that feeling of the inability to speak up to people who are white, to be able to correct, something does sort of change. Is it because of this validation? Is it because of the success that you had started to have? What changed?
Partway between the success of this child and Unsung Heroes. So between 1994, when we started writing this child, and we released Unsung Heroes 1999 and 2000, we had 2 releases for it. There was this clear moment where I had to ask myself, do you want this? And this is, do you want to be a singer? Do you want to be a songwriter? Do you want this? And I did. And I did because when I asked myself that, I imagined myself, and I do. I sing every day in my house. And when you're singing, how do you feel? I feel amazing. And that at that point became the goal. So did the career begin to change me? I'm guessing it did. It definitely had a role and part in it. But I had always written. Would the writing have done that? A little bit of everything. I think all of that began to allow me to sit with what's coming. I don't know what's coming next. Whatever that is, I really like where I am right now. And I want to keep pulling this thread. I want to know what this is. And this I didn't know was scary, but the want for it was becoming stronger than the fear of it. Was that the career? Yeah, absolutely. But I think more than anything, it was what it was allowing me to feel and feel safely, navigate safely. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's a little bit of everything that happened at that time.
The healing you had gone through, the writing you had done about the things that you had gone through, the work that you had done through your foundation to try and make life better for Inuit and for Indigenous folks. The success that you had, the validation, the love that you had, the lack of like, should I go back to my job?
Yeah.
Typing again?
Yeah.
All these things had sort of accumulated in realizing one day that when you're sitting down and having a conversation with someone who owns a record label, you don't have that same sort of feeling anymore.
Exactly.
It's powerful, Susan.
Yeah.
I watched that NFB documentary about you, that short documentary, Breath, with my friend Kathleen, and you're learning throat singing.
Oh, the little love song.
How did you do with it? How did you find? So for people who haven't seen it, I mean, so much of this book is about like the future, and so much of your life and so much of your career is about like the future of Inuit in particular. And in this documentary, for people who haven't seen it, and go check it out, it's like 6 minutes, go watch it. Susan, who's this icon, this legend, goes to where did you film it? In
Rankin.
In Rankin.
Yeah.
And you sit with Kathleen. Kathleen Merritt is an unbelievable
artist.
Yeah, artist, incredible.
Yes, yeah.
And is an incredible throat singer, and I believe teaches you how to throat sing, right?
Yeah, so we decided she would teach me something. I'm unteachable, as it turns out, in real throat singing.
Okay.
I just can't get that. I don't know how they get that. So I said to Kathleen, you have to show me something I can get. And this piece, that's called the love song, is the easiest throat singing piece you can possibly learn. So, yeah, she was teaching me this out in 30, 40 below weather. Beautiful day, but it was cold.
I did get this feeling from you in that doc and through this book that you are looking at the future. You are looking at young Inuit and saying, "Oh, look how different things are."
Yeah, and even then, because now you look at North of North, for example.
Yeah, big Netflix, CBC show.
Oh, it's so exciting.
Yeah.
That stuff is exciting. But even then, this was almost 10 years ago now. Kathleen, she had just done her cross country tour with her album. We have Tanya, who had been doing incredible work and does incredible
Tanya
work.
Tagak, yeah.
Tanya Tagak. We see Ilisapi. Then 10 years ago they had been doing their work. It's hope. It's at the end of the day, it gives us hope for even better things for the next generation. The more we do for ours, the better they do for the next,
But what does it make you feel, given that you were the first, the first Inuk to be, signed to a record label, to feel this, like the first to grow up in the settlement, fully grow up in the settlement and to see that?
I know, I think I know how fortunate I am. And what I mean by that is it was just a series of happenstances early in my move to Ontario, to Ottawa, that set off this journey. And I'm just so fortunate for that. The right people come across my path, or me across theirs, or both, at the right time when I needed it the most. And it changed my life.
And I would add, changed the lives of others. Like, to a lot of artists I speak to, the pathways that the roads that you created, the doors that you broke down. And there's sometimes we can make that into something that's a little happier than it was, because it's hard, is unbelievably meaningful to a lot right now in this country. And I hope you feel that.
I do. And I'm just, I know it's kind of a cliche thing to say, so proud. So proud to be here now at this time in this country, to be a part of that massive Indigenous movement we're in. Yeah.
Think about your mom. I mean, think about the changes she's seen over her life. Oh. How old is she now?
She's just turned 80.
80. The changes she's seen in her life.
I know. And I hope I've done them proud in the book. I know I go back to what they didn't give me, but the book is about intergenerational healing, and the only way that that's possible is that we all sit through some really uncomfortable moments, and they did. My parents sat with me through the things I put them through, and now I hope I do the same for my son. But that's when I think back on where they came from and how that changed my healing journey, understanding that piece, where they came from. That made the rest of the healing journey. Kihiani, I had to. Look what they did. I had to do my part.
It's a profoundly powerful book, and it's an excellent book, Susan. And thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us about it.
Thank you.